I did a rare 2 weeks in a row visit to the cinema to check out the cultural phenomenon that is Barbenheimer.
Okay, but you
First
did it
Barbie,
over
then
2
Oppenheimer.
weeks. You didn't do like the
First
weekend
one
experience.
was probably irresponsible parenting.
You took
Iona,
Iona to see Oppenheimer.
yeah, she was like, "I'm seriously conflicted about that man who
Yeah.
created a weapon that had the power to destroy the world." No, because Tuesday is like Iona's home day, and so we normally just do a bunch of like swimming lessons,
Yeah.
and we go to the library, and it was a nice day. So we were at the beach in Byron, and when you sort of have a toddler around that age, you sort of don't want to drive too long in the afternoon because if they fall asleep in the drive, then they're not going to sleep at night. So we were in Byron Bay. We'd had a great long day at the beach. And I thought, geez, if I get her in the car now and take her home, then she's going to sleep before dinner and then she won't go. So why don't we just stay in Byron as long as we can? So what's something we can do? And it's like, oh, Barbie's showing. But I had read, oh yeah, look, it's it's a kid's film, but there's this subtext to it and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, well, I might take a risk. She gets scared in animated films. Like I have to fast forward, Disney films when things get a bit scary. Or she doesn't even like people arguing on camera. So I thought, oh, this could be a bit of a gamble. I might have to like take her out if things get too adult at any point. So we go into the cinema, and she loves, like, she's seen the trailer. She watched it like hundreds of times and really dug it.
Okay.
Have you seen Barbie?
No.
Okay. There's nothing even vaguely offensive or scary for a child in that film. Like anything that could be sort of like any of the sort of, comment on patriarchy or whatever goes completely over the head. She just like,
Yeah, right. So it's
thing
arranged in a way that it can be both enjoyed by kids who are watching it, but then there's like the adult subtext is completely separate to that in a way that wouldn't like,
100%.
Yeah, right.
There is violence in it, but it's cartoonish violence. Like there is a big fight scene. Michael Cera does a big like sort of fight scene, very Scott Pilgrim-esque fight scene. But it's so cartoonish, it doesn't look even vaguely real. And the scariest thing that Iona was most upset by, Will Ferrell plays like the fictional head of Mattel.
Yeah. Okay.
That they were chasing Barbie and they wanted to get Barbie back. But even those scenes were done in a the biggest comparison I can think is Spice World. The Spice Girls movie. I remember sort of seeing that and it's like, oh, there's a bunch of kids here, but the jokes were, I think it's French and Saunders had something to do with the script or whatever. So it works on two levels where there's all these risque kind of jokes or maybe a bit more meta or social commentary happening on one level. But the kids are just saying the dancing and the colors and all that kind of stuff. So I quite dug it. I'm amazed it has had the impact it has both positive and negative. Like, I think it's a fine film. Like, it's fun, it's enjoyable.
I mean, the positive I get, I mean, I haven't seen, again,
you don't have to see it. You can pick up everything from the commentary on it. Like, nothing about it was surprising to me when I saw it. So, even having not seen it.
Here's what I would have, like, I mean, so we talked about, like, the marketing of it on Gruen. And so I was across all that. I'd seen all the marketing and I was just like, oh, this is going to be such a huge hit because, like, they marketed that movie. Like, even when you were looking at the, like, they would do billboards that were just pink, that Barbie pink, and the brand is so identifiable that it would just then have the date down the bottom. There was nothing else on the billboard, and people were like, oh, yeah, that's an ad for the Barbie movie. Like, the brand is that strong. Like, I mean, you look at the success of, like, Transformers and all those sort of films, but Barbie's a bigger brand than all of them, like as an iconic brand itself. That pink, the way that it's packaged, Margot Robbie, the fact that she was literally wearing Barbie outfits to the premieres. She was like, Barbie come to life. The way that they had done this slow drip marketing campaign that had only built and built momentum around it, but at the same time was like constantly this ad for the brand Barbie. And the fact that it was female forward and female focused, I was like, it makes sense to me. And obviously with the director and the writer, like you were kind of like, okay, I kind of understand what this is going to be. And I reckon this is probably going to be huge. I did not expect any negativity. I just thought there would just be people who loved it and people who were indifferent to it, right? Like I don't want to see the Barbie movie because I have it just isn't to my, it doesn't appeal to me. But I don't, have anything against it.
That right wing manosphere ecosystem, like they need content just like everyone else, and I feel like they are feasting on this as much as they can because it's actually not that critical. It's not even really critical of men. Like it's critical of established powers of like a patriarchy. That's what it's. But the message of the film is not, "Hey, dudes are bad. Be better dudes."
Yeah.
The message is, "Hey, everyone needs to be better, and don't define yourself in relation to other people. Find out who you are and be happy with who you are first. And you don't have to be Ken to Barbie or Barbie to Ken. It's like you're your own person." And so it's
I
really
mean, it's
a
pretty
message
easy
about,
to
like,
say Barbie, but a lot harder to fucking actually deal with in real life.
but it's so the level of kind of social commentary and stuff is so like light touch. Like it's not a deep meditation on any of this stuff.
No.
It's a comedy. Like it's probably as deep as like an episode of The Simpsons or anything like that. It's meant to be taken as kind of like entertainment.
Yeah, it's smart, knowing,
But
but
disposable.
yeah.
But utterly
But
disposable.
it's
And I
Barbie
think we
also.
have just
Like, I mean,
yeah.
that's probably what a Barbie movie should be, right?
Yes, yeah, and they're sort of
I mean,
meta
there's something
enough.
wrong with us as a society if we think that the Barbie movie can save anything. You know, like if we're relying on the idea that, like, I mean, I think it's overachieved as a cultural moment. Like, clearly,
Mm.
I mean, even
Well,
just in
that's
that idea of like, is she the first female director to direct $1 billion movie? Like,
correct.
even those sort of milestones, we demand so much of things being these perfect moments, like the Barbie movie to be able to be everything. It's well and truly been more than it could have been, right? Like clearly,
Yeah,
I think it's already checked that box.
yeah. I think people had hopes for it, but it is by far and away. I think what's happened though is we've also been starved of smart pop culture, like big budget entertainment. Like everything, like Marvel is clearly in some kind of creative spiral at the moment. Just everything they're producing, and they are the dominant, like tentpole brand, followed probably by Star Wars or whatever. But all that stuff has been so safe and boring. And the only time someone tried to do something different with it was, the middle of the new Star Wars films. I can't remember the name of the
Yeah,
Last Jedi. Or
Last Jedi, I think.
is that what it was? Um, and people hated it, like because Ryan Johnson was like, "Hey, let's turn this
Yeah.
into a critique of hero mythology and all this kind of stuff and subvert." Or like the Matrix, that bizarre Matrix films come out, which is just not a Matrix film. It's just a criticism of people who love the Matrix. So I think everyone got scared about, well, let's not do any commentary. And then this one film smartly does it because they don't lean into it too heavily. Like they have their cake and they eat it too. They give the studio what they want
Yeah.
in terms of a brand you can market and sell toys on and blah, 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 blah. But then there's also enough kind of smart commentary underneath that people go, okay, well, this is better than Transformers or a Marvel film.
But you also say that it's a comedy, right? Like
Yeah.
it's a comedy movie. And the weird thing is that there isn't much of a budget for a comedy movie generally now. We don't see a lot of
Yeah.
comedy movies. Like you used to be able to go to the movies and go and see a comedy, whereas like that's that. So a smart comedy that say, Noah Baumbach would write and Greta Gerwig would like direct. Those they're not really getting made as much, right? Like for a mainstream
Yeah.
audience, like that budget just to make a big mainstream comedy. Whereas like people used to go to mainstream comedies all the time. That just seems to have been eaten up, that space.
I was talking to some like younger friends of ours, and they were like raving about Barbie, and I said the same thing. I said like, because I wear glasses now, I'm old. But in the '90s, like we made films like that all the time. Like essentially, the closest comparison besides like Spice World I can think of is the Brady Bunch movie.
Oh yeah,
Brady Bunch movie came out in the early '90s, and essentially it was a fish out of water story about this, stereotypical sitcom family from the '60s now in the modern day. And none of their values make sense. They seem so quaint and weird and strange. And that's kind of the Barbie movie. She comes from this protected world or, this Barbie land into the real world. And it's that fish out of water contrast. But they made 2 Brady Bunch movies. They made a bunch of those SNL type mid-budget $20 to $30 million comedies. Some would hit, some wouldn't hit. But it was its own industry. But you're right. Like,
but yeah, that's the SNL one is like, I mean, there was all those obviously character, like, your Wayne's Worlds and your Mike Myers like franchises and all those sort of things where you're like, there just used to be a lot of comedies that somebody had thrown some money at, you know?
Mm. Do you think like, well, The Hangover was probably the last really big one that was like a mid-budget, 30, 40 million maybe, that gross, but they just don't. American Pie, I guess, they're the sort of in the last 20 years, but I can't think of a smaller comedy.
To see the full video, join our Patreon.
Patreon.com/TOFOP.